Well, welcome everyone. I am really excited to have our guest with us today, Sarah Frazer. And she is going to talk to us about how to collaborate with other Christian writers. But Sarah and I have had the privilege of working together on a couple projects. And as I was kind of planning out the guests for this fall, I was like, well, Sarah would be great because she has kind of honed in on this whole process of collaborating with other writers and has a lot of experience with this. So I'm really excited to learn from you today, Sarah. But tell us a little bit about yourself, where you live, what you write about, those kind of things.
Thank you so much for having me, Kara. This is such an honor. I live in the hills of Appalachia in West Virginia. My husband and I have five children. We have three that are biological and two adopted. They age range from 16 years old down to 9. I homeschool our special needs daughter. She's 11, and then the other four attend a local Christian school. And so we are really busy at our house, but I really, really love to write. I've always loved to write since I was a little girl. My mom has little stories that I wrote as a little girl in elementary school. She still has them at her house. Um and so when my two oldest boys, when they were very little, I decided to quit my job and stay home. I used to teach in public school. And so I was trying to figure out, um, as a mom, that can be all consuming job, but you also need something for yourself. And so, writing became that sort of outlet for me to, that was just me, but it's really grown into something that I love to do, but most importantly, I love that I get the opportunity to encourage women specifically to read their Bibles. And it was something um that the Lord really worked in my life over the past 20 years, really. And I'm excited to encourage women in that way to read their Bibles, whatever that looks like in whatever season you're in. So that's what I write about, what I love, what I'm passionate about. But I just released my first traditionally published book last fall, and so that was very exciting. And yeah, and I have several projects that I've worked with other writers with, and I really enjoy that process as well.
Well, I love what you were talking about being a mom and also needing something of your own. That was my experience as well, and such a great way, just a great outlet for us and our all of our thoughts and
Mhm.
creative leanings to be able to kind of put it towards this good use. And also, I think too, like the fact that you're homeschooling and writing, and you create materials that are really geared towards teaching people how to read and study the Bible are all like what a neat thing the Lord's done for you and kind of pulling all of these gifts and talents of yours together in your writing work. So that's really great.
It's a
Well,
privilege, it is.
yeah, I love it. Well, I mentioned earlier that you and I have collaborated on a few projects, and I know that you've done more than what you and I have just worked on. But tell us a little bit about what how you've used collaboration in your own writing and like how that has not only like benefited the people you're serving, but benefited you as a writer and as the one who is kind of pooling people together to work on a common project.
Yeah, I think it goes back to my very first writers conference that I attended, and it was back in 2015. And I remember sitting at a table at one of the luncheons, and I just looked around the table and I thought to myself, do I belong here? Like, is there a space for me here? Because I could just see all of these other really talented people, and so many of the messages that year at the conference and then just talking with people was just confirmation that the Lord builds a bigger table, that we don't have to be in competition, that we are actually um, fellow workers standing side by side, and we are all pulling on the same rope.
Mhm.
basically. And so I went away from that, realizing that even though writing, the act of writing itself is so isolating and it is a solo job when you sit down and write, um, it doesn't, the whole project, the whole idea of sharing your writing is something that you need other people for. And so, of course, I heard a lot about platform building and all of that, but I have to say at the beginning, I was like, well, I need to network in order to build my platform. And so I want to, maybe work with this person or this person. And although that is a good and honest and completely legitimate reason to collaborate for with people on writing, to build your platform, I have found that there are 100 more benefits to collaborating with other people. And I just remember the first time probably the first experience I had collaborating was back in the blogging world, when this was probably 10 or 12 years ago. No, probably longer than that, 15 years ago, when they had link ups. So you would go to a blog and at the bottom you could click on different blog posts of other bloggers. I don't know if there's anybody out there that was
That
blogging back.
predates me, but that sounds good. I like the idea.
So I was in a link up is what we would call it, and we'd all have this code that we would put at the bottom of our blog post, and people could come, and we called it different things, and there were different people coming in and out over the years. But I probably did that for about 4 or 5 years when I first started blogging, and I'm still friends, like professionally and personally, with some of those people that I met 15 years ago. And so that was probably my very first time kind of collaborating and working with other bloggers and writers. And so over the years, those connections have turned into, some of them have turned into projects. And specifically, I have one blogger friend. We've done a ton of projects together. And then, of course, I would have people guest post on my blog. I wrote on adoption a lot at the beginning. And so I would have other adoptive moms come and write on my blog. So I I really enjoyed just the whole aspect of collaborating with other writers from really the beginning of my journey. So
I love that. I love the progression of how that started and the way that working together with somebody else is such a good thing to get us out of our silos as writers. And I've experienced the same thing, that I've learned so much, made friends in the process, and then I think we all kind of share in the benefits together of that collaboration. So I attest to what you're saying. That's really great. Um, Tell us a little bit about some of those benefits. You mentioned there are hundreds of them, but tell us a little bit concretely,
yeah.
because it is a lot of work, right? Especially when you're the one, there's a difference between the one who's heading up a collaborative project and the ones who are contributing to it. I've been a contributor to some of your work, but that's just a small little piece of the bigger puzzle. So what are some of those things, especially from your perspective as kind of the head of a collaboration? What have you received from that?
I think as the head of it, I developed a sort of, well, first of all, you have to step into a leadership role, and that might not fit your personality to be that leader, but there are some really good life lessons about leading people, and being the first one and kind of setting the vision. That's one of the benefits of being the leader and being the person that's putting a project together is you get to set the vision. What is this going to look like? And that helps you kind of narrow down what you're about. And it kind of helps you kind of do some internal work in your heart and say, what does my audience need and how can I help them? And one of those things that I also love is that I've learned from other writers. Um, by being I've been a part of projects as well that I haven't led, and I learned a lot from that. And then I've also learned a lot just about writing, about scripture, just life lessons. I mean, there's a project that Kara and I are working on, not just us, but me and a bunch of other writers. And I read through all of the devotionals that were submitted, and it was just such an uplifting, an hour. It took me about an hour to read all of them, and I was just so uplifted spiritually. And I thought, other writers have such a unique perspective. Everybody has a unique perspective. And so I love it that, especially if you are introducing other writers to your audience, they get another perspective. And that's what I love. It is so easy for me to promote other people's writings because I can honestly say, you're going to benefit from this. And most of the time, people do. Another reason that I really love group projects and sort of like this collaborative writing is it divides the work up.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
there's been projects that I wanted to do, and I thought, I can't do all of this. And this last devotional that we're working on, it was going to be just me. I was going to just write it, and I thought, I don't have the time or the energy to make each devotional exactly, perfect and polished and really the way I want it to sound. And so I divided the work. I
Yeah.
asked other people to submit. And so you can really produce something of really high quality when you ask other people to come in and help you. And
That's
then,
so good
yeah,
because otherwise, that would have been maybe a year or 2 year long project, right? If you
yes,
were to actually go through that whole process and create a devotional on the Psalms, that would have required all of you. But when you do this collaboration, it many hands make the work light. And
yeah,
so and speed it up too, right? So you can
yeah,
get through
yeah.
some pretty meaty things with some help from some friends.
Yes, and then also just the basic of being exposed to new audiences. It's always good to be able to have your work um shared with other audiences, but also I love championing other writers' work. I just love sharing about other writers because um it there is this tendency, and it's in my own heart, so maybe it's in other people's hearts, to feel like that I constantly have to be sharing about my work and my platform building and this is, my writing, my writing, my writing, and it gets sort of me centered. And I really think that there's a biblical principle of sharing and giving, and the Lord repays you. And I'm not one of those wealth and health, like prosperity people saying, you give $100, God's gonna give you 1,000, definitely not one of those kind of people. But I do believe there is a biblical principle about giving away, what you have to other writers and saying, yes, you can come and, my audience can benefit from you and you can benefit from maybe a few more followers. And the Lord, I do think he blesses that. And it's a more um, Christian way of kind of sharing that sort of platform. We're all sharing our platforms with people and realizing that we're not building up ourselves, we're building up Christ and the church. And so Christ is on the platform, right? And so we just kind of help build him up collaboratively.
I love that.
Mhm.
And it's like a spiritual act of service too.
Yes.
I think when we
Yes.
offer our words and when you link arms with a friend who shares it with her audience,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There is that mutual benefiting that happens. So now just so we can define what we're talking about for our audience when we're talking about collaborations, the way you've done it in the past is you're literally compiling books, right? Devotional books and
Yes.
getting other writers to contribute to that. And then you're selling those books, I presume, right?
Yes. So, a few of the books that I've put together are available as ebooks on my website. And then what the way I have done it in the past is offer the contributors an affiliate, which means that for if they use their special link, they sign up for the program and then they are assigned a link. And if they share that with their audience, they get a portion of each sale. If that is possible when I sell things, then I will always try to do that for people who contribute. Another way is just pay people to contribute, like just say, I'm going to pay you this amount of money to contribute. Because I feel like it's not about just making me money. Like that's not why I'm creating these devotionals. I think that I go back to my own vision for my own writing, and that is to encourage moms to be in God's word and to encourage women in whatever season they are in to read God's word. And so that's my niche. That's sort of my focus. And so am going to create things like a membership site or a group of Bible studies, devotionals, my blog, my website, all of that is going to point to that. So if you're listening and that's not what you write about, then you have to think about what is going to benefit my audience. What are some things that I want to speak to them? Maybe it's a prayer book, right? Maybe it's just a book of prayers, or I thought maybe it could be a book on a very niche topic. I was trying to brainstorm like an example, a book for special needs moms who for them to read in the car line. Right? I mean, that's super niche. And ideally, it's a project that fits into your audience. And so that kind of helps you narrow it down. Another way to kind of dip your toe into working with other writers and collaborating is having a website that is all collaborative content, or at least having like maybe once a week you have a guest post. I've done that. I did that for years and years. And that kind of helps you dip your toe and you have these parameters or a topic and then finding people to write on that. So it doesn't have to be a product. It can simply be a website or a blog. It can be an email sequence. It can be something free that you give away. You don't even have to charge, like I do. I mean, that's totally up to you. So,
Yeah, I love that. I think it's great that you do, actually. I think it's great to see that people can do that and they can do it successfully. And I
mhm,
think that expands our vision for it. I think um my tendency is to think of um, just guest posting on somebody else's website, which is great.
right,
That's another way to
right.
collaborate. But you're kind of taking that collaboration to the next level. And I love that you're entrepreneurial about that. And as a result, it does benefit. It does benefit everyone. So when we were thinking about this, like you've mentioned a lot of the benefits of working together, but what obviously there's got to be some difficulties in that as well. So, what would you say to somebody who might be thinking about putting together some sort of collaborative process or project? What are some things to think about and maybe some things to be aware of before you launch in?
Yeah, I think you have to think there are some drawbacks. You do not have a you don't have complete control over what is written or shared with you. So, there have been times where someone has submitted something for a project and I've not been able to use it. And
Mhm.
so I can talk more about how to vet your writers and how to pick who you're going to work with from trial and error on my part. So you don't have complete control, but Kathy did ask in the chat how much editorial control you have. I've maintained complete editorial control. So I actually have a friend of mine who loves editing stuff and she didn't even want me to pay her, but I do pay her a little bit. So every project that I've had, she goes through and like fixes all the grammar and fixes the typos and kind of like if there's a wonky sentence, that sort of thing. So you can have all the editorial control over the project because this is going to have your name mostly on it. And so you want to make sure that, but be upfront with your writers and say this could be edited. And I try to give my writers a chance to approve the edits after I do the editing or my friend does the editing. And some writers tell me they approve, and some writers don't. And some writers, will say, hey, can you change this to this and this? And I'm very flexible about making accommodations for things. So you do have some control, but you don't have all control. And I think that's the drawback. I'm a very much a control person. So asking someone else to write something that is my vision and my idea, you kind of have to let that go a little bit. And
Mhm.
so another drawback is you do have to actually plan really far in advance. So this can't be like, oh, next month I want to release this book. No, you're gonna have to give yourself at least 6 months. um at least to try to think through and plan and get organized. So um and another drawback is you do have people that will say yes and then drop out or don't follow through. And so but a lot of those drawbacks can be avoided and can be planned for. And so if you want me to talk a little bit about that, I can.
Yeah, please do.
But yeah, so what if people don't follow through, right? Or they miss deadlines? This is where I make sure that I have enough people to fill every space, and I often don't assign myself any writing at first. And so I've learned that there will be people that drop out. And so in that case, I leave myself open to fill in the gaps. So I might fill in for this or that. Or I might ask more people than I need. And so that's happened, and I end up with the correct number that I was looking for. And then it happens, and I end up having more than I need, which then that's even greater, right? Um, I think that one of the things for people missing deadlines is this is just a little secret, but I usually give them a deadline about a week before I actually need it. So I buffer my writers with a week. And so I don't tell them this. I just say, I need this by this deadline. I remind them of the deadline. I remind them. And then inevitably, there's always two or three people who are like, I'm so sorry. Can I get it to you in a few days? And I have time and I can say yes. Okay.
That's a
So yeah,
good measure, safety measure. That's good.
yes. So, it just the drawbacks you can kind of plan for. And then but it takes a lot of work. And you just kind of have to go in understanding that it's not a lot of writing work. So it's not a lot of that, it's a lot of planning work. So it's a lot of
Yeah,
behind the scenes
it
work.
seems like it requires for you as the collaborator to really have some good organizational skills,
Yeah.
be able to get a real macro view of what you're after,
Yeah.
clear communication, and just good time management, right? Like those are some things that you would probably really need to feel confident in order to pull off something of this scale, right? We're talking about a big scale
Yes.
thing, but
Yes.
um,
And I would suggest that if you are wanting to try this for the first time, I wish someone had told me this. Pick a project that you have already done. So pick something that you say you want to publish a devotional. Publish one by yourself first. And just so you know the
good plan.
steps
Yeah,
that it is going to take to be able to publish that. Um, don't try to do the collaborative on a brand new project that you've never done before because you don't know the hiccups that will come. You don't know the time you might say it's going to be this time or this time and or I need this from you. Oh wait, I also need this from you and oh wait, there's this. You want to know exactly what each step is going to take, how long it's probably going to take, and then what the finished product is. And so, I would suggest that you pick a project you've already done before. Something that you've either self-published or that you maybe it's something that you've been a part of before. And then you can, talk to the person who ran it to kind of see their method. But I would suggest that you try to do it first.
I think
So,
that's really wise. It's really wise because from start to finish, then you have an idea
yes.
of all that's involved because there's a lot of marketing involved. And I don't know, are you using Amazon KDP? Are you putting it through?
No.
Okay.
So I have used that in the past, and there was one group project that we did have on Amazon, but because I did it with another girl, only one of us could upload it, so only one of us could get any payment from it. And I didn't feel right for us to kind of put it on Amazon and only one of us, and then would I pay her or would she pay me, or how would that work? And so we ended up did uploading it to Amazon. I think it's on there, but and I do have my own self-published books on Amazon KDP, but I found having your own website and your own shop gives you a lot more control over the content. And if you need to make changes, it's so much easier if you're using your own files instead of the KDP. And I don't know what the guidelines are anymore. It's been several years since I used that, but it used to be that they owned your material unless you purchased your own ISBN number. And so they owned it and it wasn't copyrighted to you. And so I don't know if they've changed that. You'll have to really.
I think that's an option now. We just
Okay.
recently did an
Okay.
episode about that. So yes, you
Okay.
can purchase your own ISBN
Okay.
number.
And so they were just rolling that out, or they hadn't rolled it out or something when I was still doing that. And so I just switched over, have my own shop on my website. And so that's where I put a lot of my stuff. So,
So when you are thinking through these projects, what are you looking for and how do you kind of find the people? Do you know a lot of writers personally and so you just reach out to them, but how do you make that determination?
so, because I've been to a lot of writers' conferences and I've done these blogger link ups, and I've always kind of had other writers that I contributed things to, and developed relationships with. I know a lot of people now. It wasn't always the case. So if you feel like you don't really know, um, anybody that you could ask, there's a couple ways you could do it. I mean, this membership site is the perfect place. I
Yes,
mean,
I was just going to say
I was gonna
writer's
say,
block.
I think that if you're listening to this and you're part of the writer's block, whether the free or the paid version or whatever, you can find people here. And so I don't think
Absolutely.
you're gonna have a problem with that. And so yeah, I would suggest that you ask people on the writer's block. I asked people that I worked with on other projects, and then if we were all writing for the same website or the same ministry, then I asked some of those people, would you like to contribute? And then I've been a part of different mastermind groups, like an Instagram mastermind, or just getting in with different writers. You get to know people. And so um I've worked with a lot of different people. And so it's I don't think you're going to have hard time finding people that are willing to write for you. For me, I have a hard time figuring out who I want to ask of the
Yeah.
people I know.
Yeah.
So,
It takes probably a little time and research, familiarizing yourself with the people you're asking
mhm.
and like you said, this is something that is in alignment with your own writing platform. And so there are certain probably styles or voices that you're reading, you're listening to that you feel like this could be somebody who's in alignment with what I'm about and she
Yeah.
could complement what my overarching goals are.
And that is very true. And so what I would suggest, if you don't do this already, is find people that are already writing what you write about and follow them on social media, because they're going to give you ideas just by following them, and you're going to hear their voice. And supporting, I mean, that's where the supporting comes as well. Like find those people. I follow a lot of people on Instagram that write about Bible study. And you might think, well, why would you follow them? Like that's what you want to write about, but I get lots of ideas, but I also those people can become resources for you. And you can reach out to them. There's been times I've just DM'd someone on Instagram and said, I love that you shared about this. I have this project that I'm doing. Would you like to contribute to it? And a few times people have said yes. And so I think that finding those people on Instagram or Facebook or Pinterest or wherever you are, is would be an avenue. And then that way you know what like their voice sounds like. One other thing I will say is this is just a little practical advice from my own experience. I usually send out an email to about 20 people if I'm going to start a brand new project. And I make note in my spreadsheet who emails me back within the first 3 days. And if it takes the person a week or two before they respond, I might not ask them again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that's just something I've learned. If people are responsive, not the same day, like I am bad about even not even the same day. And sometimes it'll be a few days before I get to check my email. But if someone takes about a week or two before they respond, they might not be the person that is going to be able to handle like the deadline thing. And
Yeah,
so
that's a good test.
yeah, so that's a little test if you're just kind of putting feelers out there about, who should I work with this person or that person. Take note of the people who respond right away because they're the ones that are checking their email, they're the ones that are on top of things, and then they're enthusiastic, right? Like,
Right.
yeah, I'd love to be a part of this. Or there were several writers that I emailed for this last project that said no, but they told me within like a day or two. And so I'm like, I will definitely, and then they would say, keep me in mind for next time. And I will keep them in mind for next time. They couldn't help out with this project, but maybe there's something in the future because they're on top of it. And so,
I
but
I love that bit of advice, and I think it's a good, like, soft reminder
yeah.
to us as, just the people. It's like the early bird gets the worm kind of thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
just being
Yeah.
there is some reward and benefit for just staying on top of those kind of things, and
Yeah.
being a responsive person is just, first of all, it's polite,
It is.
and and then it kind of instills trust in the people that want to work with you.
Yeah.
Carrie asked in the chat, and I think this is a good question because you mentioned you're not on KDP, but you're using some sort of a checkout cart on your
Mhm.
website. Do you make your books into a PDF? And if so, are you designing those yourself, or do you hire that out?
So, I've done both. And so, yes, I do make them PDF, and there are ways to make them Kindle friendly. And so Kindle supposedly can download PDFs. I don't know what great quality they are, or if they'll be, if it'll look correctly, but I have hired freelance specialists to help me transfer the files from a PDF into uh into KDP friendly files. And also I think Apple has their own book like thing, but I don't know how many people use it, but it used to be a thing, iBooks or whatever. I remember when I first started putting things on my website, I would have all three versions available. Excuse me, but I would hire someone to do it. And I don't know if you've ever talked about hiring freelancers like on Upwork or Fiverr. I don't know if you've talked about that, but
We
those
haven't, but I'm a big proponent of it, and I do it
yeah.
often.
Yeah, so you can just say, "Hey, I have this file. Will you make it KDP friendly?" This last project, I did hire someone um on Upwork who I've worked with before, and they English is not their first language, but I thought they've done good work before, and so this time I thought, well, maybe they can do this book as well, and they could not get my vision for it. Like I kept trying to get them to edit it the way I wanted it to look and the size and all of that. And they were whatever was going on in their life, they just weren't getting it done. And so I ended up paying them, but I ended up designing the PDF myself, which takes hours. I just have
Hmm.
to say. Um, so I have designed the PDFs before. I use Canva. And so that's how I designed the PDFs. And then um these are all mostly PDFs. Now, digital ebooks. I have published hard copy books, and so self-published hard copy books. And um, the problem with hard copies is um, it's expensive to have them printed. And so it's almost I f- it's just you have to charge a lot more for a hard copy to your audience than you do the digital version, because obviously the digital version is free for you. It doesn't cost you anything. It's just a file. And so the hard copies are I have mixed feelings about doing that. It's possible, and I am going to have hard copies available for this latest project. Um, but I'm going to have to charge probably around $15 to make any money off of them. And so or what I feel like is enough money, $15 plus shipping, which is around 2 or $3. So um I don't know. And also I'm going to try something new this time where I do pre-orders only for the hard copies. And so I'm just going to order what people buy. And that way, I'm not putting, I would put all my money into these hard copy books, and I would either end up with a bunch of extras or I wouldn't make my money, and then I wouldn't make my money back. And so, and plus you have to have that money up front. And it's usually around, I think the PDFs that I create are around, you can get them as cheap as maybe $4, but it's very cheap quality. If you want nicer quality, it's around $8 or $9 a book. And so that's just your own cost, plus shipping. And so, um, if I order, 50 copies of a book that's almost $10, I mean,
Yeah,
that's really a big
that's
chunk of
putting a
money.
big chunk of money out right
Yeah,
away.
and
Yeah.
so I'm gonna try the pre-order. So you can always try that. Like, let just order what you want. And so yeah,
And
so
that seems kind of like an advance move, right? For
yes,
people who are just thinking about doing this. Like I would say
yes,
don't worry about that
don't do
right
that.
now. Just
No, I
do a
would not
PDF
suggest
or
that
do
either.
KDP. Do
Yes.
something that makes your life
If
easier.
if you've never done anything like that, KDP is wonderful.
Yeah,
It
it
really
really
is.
is.
It
And
it, it really
you open yourself and your work up to such a broad audience.
yes. Yes. Yes.
Well, I want to give people an opportunity to ask questions, but before we do that, can you
Uh-huh.
give us a little preview of what you're going to talk to us about on Thursday?
Yeah, so I'm gonna basically kind of go through in more detail kind of the questions that we talked about here, but I'm gonna kind of show you a little bit of behind the scenes of how I organize and plan my projects. So I'm gonna kind of show you, I use Google Docs and Google Sheets. Any kind of calendar program would also work, but I usually plan my projects per dates. And do you want me to share my screen? I could probably pull up um what I'm going to share and just briefly
Let's,
on
why don't you just share with us
yeah.
just over Zoom for now?
Yeah, that's fine. So yeah, I am going to share more about how to use Google Docs and Dropbox, and I'm also going to talk about some of the things that I require of my writers and what kind of things that like kind of sort of like a checklist to determine like who to work with, what to ask them for. And then I'll also, like I said, talk about how I plan um my projects, and then just kind of share a little bit about what the specific projects I've worked on and what I enjoyed about them, and then also what I didn't enjoy, or things that I learned from this is what I learned from doing this project and that sort of thing. So,
Love that. And I think we'll probably really benefit from hearing, especially more in more detail on Thursday, the
yeah,
whole planning aspect of this, because
right.
I can sense already that the work that you do, and I've been able to see some of that behind the scenes, is
Mhm.
expansive. So I think that will be beneficial for all of us. So um, feel free, ladies who are on the call. You've been great to put your questions in the chat, but if you have any others, this is the time.
I
Kathy,
was
you go.
I was to say I was interested in when you're thinking about a project, does how what's your inspiration? Like, is it usually a theme and you want to do something that's all around the same theme, or is it more of a stylistic thing, or does it just vary project to project? Like, what inspires you?
What it usually is a specific theme. Like I have something very specific that, like I said, that usually it's something I think I want to create this for my audience. I think this, I look at my audience and I think, who do I speak to? What are some felt needs that they might have? What are some pain points in their life right now? And then what kind of things will encourage them, inspire them, give practical help, practical tips, maybe some next steps for whatever this difficulty is in their life. And so I think of something really specific. And so for example, the one Kara and I are working on right now is called Songs of Light, Songs of Light. And so it's a devotional based on the Psalms, and it deals with the idea of light and darkness, and how we often go through periods and seasons in our life when everything feels really dark. And what do the Psalms have to say about light and hope, and in a positive way? And so that was the theme. So I had this vision for this project, right? And that's where I think you need to start, is with what is the vision for this project? What do I want the end product to look like? I think with group projects, you have to really focus on your end and then work backwards, which was I'm going to talk about on Thursday. Like, how do you work backwards? But that's what you start with, is that end vision.
And
So
I'll
it
just say too that when she communicated that to us as writers, we all signed up for a different psalm that we were going to write on, but we knew that what she's looking for is this theme of light and darkness and hope. And so
Yeah, that
that
was my
really,
next question was
yeah,
how
it
much of
helped
that
us
vision
know how to
do you
write
put
for
out
her.
there to the people you're collaborating with?
Oh,
Cool.
you tell them everything. You tell them everything about this project. This is what I hope to do for this project, right? This is who we're writing for. This is the person that we're writing for. So you speak to her in your own voice and your own ideas, your own experience, and keep it on this theme. And so I have done projects where it's been really broad, and I'm like, I got all kinds of things. And I thought that's not the way to do this. Really to have that specific niche thing. And honestly, if we're talking about marketing and sales, the more niche you can be, the better. And so the more specific you can be, um, the better it is, um, as far as marketing goes. So yeah.
So how do you tell the people when they've submitted something and you go, oh, it's not right for this project, or
Um,
you know?
so thankfully I've only had that happen a couple times. I think one time I was able to go back to the writer and say, this is actually more of what we're looking for. You did XYZ, and we're actually looking more for ABC, and kind of be specific about where they missed the mark, and say, would it be possible for you to resubmit within this time frame? If not, we're not going to be able to use this. And they've been able to resubmit that one time. Another one, I waited too late, and because I didn't know how to tell her that none of it, and it wasn't huge, but it was a lot of work on her part, and it was out of left field what she submitted, and I just thought
Mm-hmm.
there's no way of salvaging this. And
Hmm.
so I ended up telling her just flat out, thank you so much for working on this. I'm going to keep it. I'm not going to be able to use it right now, but I'll let you know if I want to work on this again in the future with you. And so that's kind of what I said to kind of soften it. I'll never use it, and I probably won't ask her to write for me again because the issue was theology. There
Mhm,
wasn't going to
mhm,
be any kind of reconciliation as far as like if this is what you believe that's not doesn't align with I thought we had, crossed all
mhm,
those checklists, and someone just kind of snuck in with me and thought, okay, their view on this particular point of theology isn't one that I'm willing to budge on. And so,
mhm,
and if this is how they feel and this is what they believe, I'm not going to ask them to change what they believe. And so, um, yeah, so I just kind of politely told her that I wasn't able to use this, but that I would keep it. And if I did want to use parts of this in the future, I would let her know. So
Yeah,
that's the tricky situation.
that's a tricky one.
And that's where a lot of pre-planning and really investigating who you're asking before you ask them um,
mhm,
really pays off in the end. Um, you just want to find someone who, and that's where it's tricky because you want to give people who don't have a lot of work out there an opportunity to share their work. But I always read something a person writes before I ask them to write for me. And then I read lots of other things, that they're doing as well. And so, but yeah, I can talk about that on Thursday as well about really how to vet the people that you write for, and then you might avoid
mhm.
those situations. So,
Well, yeah, especially when they're like friends or colleagues. Yeah,
yes.
I started a teacher's devotional many years ago before I even had a clue of anything that I was doing. And I picked like 4 or 5 people that I thought could address a particular topic and asked them to write something for it. And and I was like, oh, okay. Um, um, okay, one person, maybe wrote 150 words and another one wrote like 1,200 words.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
like, and neither one of them really got to the point of the heart of what they needed to write about. So anyway, I didn't know what I thought I could just give them this topic and this is what it's for. And, all would be well. And so it's sitting in my computer, just,
Yeah.
sitting there.
Well, one of the things I've learned is be as specific as possible on
Mhm,
what you want it to be about, but also give word count. So Kara knows I tell
mhm,
people how many words I want this to be. I wanted it to fit on a page. So I said, no more than 500 or 600 words. And so I did get a few people. I don't know if it was you, Kara, or somebody else where it was like a little bit over the page when I went
It
to
was
like
probably me.
format it. I think it was you actually. It was so funny. But it was like, but it all fit because I had it open lay, and so it fit on the second page. It was fine. But I was just laughing
Sorry
because,
about that.
well, no, but then some people didn't even submit up to 400 words, and I was hoping, and they were like 300 and some, and so it barely took up a page, if like a half a page or a little over half. So, um, you just kind of, that's where I said that's one of the disadvantages where you have to kind of let some of those things go and say it's
mhm.
not going to look, perfect. But if you have those specific guidelines and say, I'm willing like it to be this long and this is the topic, then that really helps.
Yeah.
Well, and probably that could be another area where you could add buffer, right? To
Yes.
your writers because it's easier to take away
Yes,
is to add. But
it
yeah,
is. And so I think I gave a limit of words, but I didn't give a minimum. I'm not sure if I did give a minimum or not. And so that's what I learned from this one. I was like, I
yeah,
need
you
to give
learn
a
something new
minimum.
every time. Yeah,
It needs to be at least this many and no more than this many. So anyway,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's some good things.
I'm really interested that you said you start a project by determining who your audience is.
Mhm.
So is your audience usually the same people that like you said you like to encourage women to read and study their Bibles? Is that when you do collaborations, is that typically along that same audience, or are your collaboration attempts things that are like outside of that zone?
I try to keep it in that zone because that's what my audience is used to hearing from me. And I want to offer them other voices that speak on the same thing. And so I could write a book I thought of that book for special needs moms for the car line. I'm like, I could write that. I know I am a special needs mom, and I know a lot of special needs moms and writers that are special needs moms, but that's not who I speak to. Like, that's not specifically my audience. And so maybe one of these days I will, but I try to keep it to my own audience. It gives your audience, they know when they come to you what to expect. And that really keeps people engaged with your writing if they know, like, this is person's going to speak to me on this. And so yeah.
And Sarah, how much, I mean, if you had to guess, how much of your audience has been built around collaborative projects? Is that a question that you've ever thought about? Or do you feel like you've built your audience from your website or a combination of both?
Um, I don't think that I have built a ton of my social media presence, or on my audience, on my collaborative work. I don't think a lot of my social media audience comes from my collaborative work. A few, I mean, less than 100 maybe, over the years. And so, but I have grown my email list. And so that's where, I think if you can promote your email list within this project and say, encourage people to sign up for your email list or visit your blog, and then you have the pop up for your email list or whatever. And so my focus over the past 10 years has been growing my email list. And so that's where my focus is. And I have quite a large email list now, and probably maybe 10 to 15% of that growth has been through collaborative projects. So it's not a huge platform building, but I have gotten emails from people saying, "Oh, so and so shared about this book that they're in, and I follow them, and now I'm going to follow you." Now I have gotten some of those messages, but I don't know if it's going to be a lot. I've never really thought about it. And I don't know if
Yeah.
there's a way for me to track it either. So,
Yeah, it's just kind of an interesting thought because you are like, that's another benefit because you're working with writers who are going to be sharing your work with their
right,
audiences too. So
right.
you get that overlap, which is really good.
Yes. So I guarantee that my platform has grown from that, but I don't think I could measure it, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's fair. Well, we have time for maybe one more.
Do you mind sharing how big is your platform? How many
Um,
how many are on your email list?
I'm almost to 25,000. So,
Wow.
but a lot of that has been, this is just a side note. If you want me to come back and talk about this, I can. A lot of it has been through Pinterest. And so
Hmm.
I've found a niche in Pinterest, that helps me grow. I probably gain around 2 to 300 new followers or new emails a month. And so
Wow.
that's about how many I gain, and probably 90% of it comes from Pinterest, and maybe 5% from my
Wow.
blog. So,
Yeah, I
Wow.
definitely need to hear about that.
Yeah, we do have a Pinterest teaching coming up
oh, good,
Okay.
fall,
good.
but I will tap your shoulder on that, Sarah, because clearly you've got a method to your growth, and I love
I have
hearing
shared
about
it,
that.
and I will share it freely how I do it. And I have never heard back if people are like, I did that and it totally exploded, or if it was just a fluke for me. I don't know, but I will gladly share what we do. I have a Pinterest manager. I have hired, and I do pay her, and her and I work together for the specific goal of growing my email list. And so
Mm.
I don't do it alone. That's another collaborative thing. I don't do it alone, and so I can't take all the credit, but she's really great, and her and I work together. So, yeah.
That's exciting. Yeah,
Yeah.
we will need to revisit this
Mhm.
topic for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I know a lot of people are surprised because my social media doesn't match my email list. And I've shared my social media with my email followers, but they just want me on email and they don't really follow me on social media. So,
Hmm.
well, and I find
so
that encouraging because I think there's
Yeah.
just a lot of writers who feel that social media works for a lot of different types of creators. I
mhm.
don't see that,
Mm-mm.
except for a few rare exceptions. I think it's really difficult for writers to build
I
a platform.
I am convinced that I social media is a way for me to speak to a smaller audience. Um that is semi-interested in what I have to say, but my email list are people that are invested in what I have to say. And so, and honestly, that is what publishers are looking for. And the
Hmm.
probably the number one reason I was able to get a book deal was probably my email list because that's what they were looking at as far as people who will pay to hear to read what you write. And so and my email list is free. I don't charge for any of it. I've thought about going to Substack, but I know everybody is right now on the writer world, and I think I'm just gonna hold my ground on the free. I know Substack can be free as well, but I just like the way I do my
You've got
emails.
something working for you. I
It's
wouldn't mess with
working, so
it.
I'm not
Right.
gonna mess with it. You know, you don't fiddle with it. I started fiddling with stuff on my blog and like my numbers just tanked and I'm like, what did I do? So if it's working, I just leave it.
Leave it alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. Well, this has been really fun. I love talking about collaboration. I've worked with Sarah. She's great to work with. And it's fun to partner up and meet new writer friends. And so that's been a real blessing for me. And I appreciate you, Sarah. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And we're excited to hear more on Thursday.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and these were great questions, and this was fun. I loved it.
Great. Well,
You.
thanks everyone. We'll see you again
Mhm.
on Thursday.
Thursday. All right, bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.